Hi, I'm Peter J Rea. Welcome to my second floor lair. How do you like my t-shirt? Cleveland City of Champions. We had these made back in 1999. So it only took 17 years to work when the Cavs won the 2016 championship in the NBA. The idea is to use a history and positive thinking to inspire achievements in the present. Since I'm a sports fan and want Cleveland to win titles, I thought if I put on a t-shirt with the slogan, this positive slogan, Cleveland City of Champions, that and put down the championships of previous years, going back to the 1895 Cleveland Spiders, has a lot on the Barons and the Browns and different teams won championships, to use those to inspire teams to win championships now. And I think this is a purpose of history. It can be inspiring. This is why I like history. Okay, today's topic is Resalest Remarkable Books, number 22. First book today is Cleveland TV Memories by Tom Farron and R.D. Heldenfels, published in 1999. He talks about people like Dorothy Fuldheim, who was admired by women of my mother's generation back in the 1960s. She was like Cleveland's Barbara Walters. Captain Penny, who had a TV program that appealed to children. Mr. Jingling, who was a Christmas character, came on TV. Barnaby, another character for children. John Lanigan, of course, who had the Prize movie and then really became famous on the radio. And Ghoulardi, who had a Friday night program and appealed to young people. The next book is The Byrds Piece by Aristophanes, 400 BC, and Treatise on Law by Thomas Aquinas, 1250 AD. This is a great books volume, 2 books in one. Of course, Aristophanes was a great ancient Greek writer, and then Thomas Aquinas, who's highly regarded as a Catholic saint and a great educator. That was part of the mission of the Christian church over the centuries, was education, and that was so this was his contribution. The next book is The Cleveland Indians Encyclopedia by Russell Schneider, published in 1996. This is really something. It's really a very long book. It has every year of the Cleveland Indians, a description, and the players and their statistics. And then it has pictures of all the players, well, not all the players, but in the names of all the players and pictures of many of them. And so you can go back to your favorite years that you remember and read about, look up the statistics and the players, and it's always fun to do that. Guys like, my heroes over the years, like Charlie Spikes back in the 70s, Andre Thornton also in the late 70s, Joe Carter in the 1980s, Rico Cardi back in the 1970s, Dave LaRoche, who was a relief pitcher back in the 70s, tremendous player. So, and Russell Schneider wrote he actually was the reporter about the Cleveland Indians back in the 70s, so I read many of his stories about the Indians games and so forth. So he did a really good job here, Russell Schneider. The next book is By the Light of My Father's Smile by Alice Walker, published in 1998. Of course, she's this famous African-American female novelist. She's written tremendous books like The Color Purple. And in this book, it's very spiritual, and she gets into American Indian lore. Of course, American Indians and African Americans had a lot in common as being persecuted groups and outsiders. In fact, a lot of African Americans have American Indian blood, because sometimes, I know the slaves in the South sometimes would try to escape to Florida and join the Pensacola Indians. This happened a lot. They would, if they could make their way to an Indian place where Indians live, they could join them, and so they ended up becoming part of those Indian nations. So you'll see American Indians today with the cheekbones, which are kind of pronounced. Otis Nixon, I remember, played for the Indians. That impressed me. So anyway, this is she did a good job. Alice Walker, fine author. The next book is Bachelors Anonymous by P.G. Wodehouse, 1973. This is a novel, British novel, more British humor, and it was, I got this from actually David Solomon via Brent Lesheim, and I was writing letters to friends about books that they had recommended, and so this Wodehouse is a British humorist writing, with a what's the word, fanciful or knee slapper. You'll chuckle when you read this book. The next book is People of the Lakes by Kathleen O'Neill Geer and W. Michael Geer. This is a married couple. Man, did they wrote so many books about, and they're called these People of the different things. They were all about American Indians way back when. Actually, usually pretty early. Of course, if you think about it, when European contact started in 1492, and then you go back beyond that, there's a vast amount of time. And they went back to very early. And I believe this, this is a book about the great American Indians of the Great Lakes region. And I think it's about 1,000 years ago. Very interesting. Back then the Mississippi River really was the highway for America. And so there was all this trade on the Mississippi River. And if you could get to the Ohio River, from the Great Lakes, then you had access to that. And so I was writing a book, Cleveland City of Champions, and I wanted to include a little bit about American Indians. And of course, there's a lot more to learn. In this book, you have these characters: Otter, Pearl, Black Skull, Green Spider, the Roaring Water, that would refer to Niagara Falls, and the Freshwater Sea, the Great Lakes. So it's a fascinating topic, the American Indians, and there's just so much to learn. And if you talk about the pre-Columbian period, pre-European contact, and this couple, the Geer couple, they wrote at least 10 books about American Indians all over what became the continental United States before European contact. The next book is They're a Weird Mob by Nino Culotta, published in 1957, and So You Want to Be an Australian by Cyril Pearl, published in 1959. These are two books in one volume. They're sent to me by my Australian friend Dave Biggs. And I thought the one by Nino Culotta was really, really good because he's an Italian immigrant to Australia. Just imagine. And he had when I was living in Metro Manila, Philippines, which is a pretty crowded city, this was very appealing. I thought, wow, Australia, very big country, plenty of land, opportunity, nice people. And I thought it seemed very, very appealing. And that's why, a lot of people do move to Australia. It's been one of those countries that you can go live in, land of immigrants, because it's a very large country, it's a pretty small population. In a way, it's similar to Canada in that much of the country is not that habitable in Canada because it's too cold, and Australia because it's desert. So most of the people in Australia are in the southeast. I found this was a wonderful book, and this interesting experience of this Italian immigrant in Australia, with having language troubles and trying to adjust, and actually getting along pretty well because people were nice to him. The next book is Dodger Dogs to Fenway Franks by Bob Wood, published in 1988. Now, the author in this book, he went to every Major League Baseball stadium in 1985 and traveled the country. This was something he decided to do. I guess he had the time, and he went to every stadium and wrote about, described it, and so it's interesting. I know he got to Cleveland Municipal Stadium, I believe, on August 4th, 1985. And so it's interesting experiences this fellow had, comparing the stadiums and getting to see all the different teams and the food and the sights and sounds, because they're all unique. Some are pretty old, like Fenway Park, really old, and then you have them, they're built in different times. So it's very interesting, different parts of the country. You have all these different environments and moods. The next book is Poetics by Aristotle, published in 375 BC, and King Lear by William Shakespeare, published in 1600. These are, again, 2 books in one, a great books volume from my friend Dr. Denko. Of course, Aristotle is one of the great ancient Greek philosophers, who contributed so much to our way of thinking in modern life. We owe so much to them. The 3 great ones, Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates. And King Lear, of course, Shakespeare, some consider the greatest author of all time. I find him challenging. We read King Lear in high school, and this the thing I remember about the story is King Lear is kind of a crazy guy. And one time he went out into a storm and was raging at the storm, like shouting at the storm, shouting his frustrations, which isn't a bad idea. As long as you don't stay out too long, you can maybe get some relief and get back indoors, especially if it's too cold. So anyway, the next book is In Search of the Word by F. Shonil Jose, published in 1998. Yeah, I felt like this was just having a conversation with him, with my good friend, Frankie Jose. And I was hoping that he would sell Philippines Nation of Champions t-shirts. I did the same thing for the Philippines. I did for Cleveland. Came up with these accomplishments that had been achieved by Filipinos over the years. So anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I thought Frank F. Shonil was a wonderful author. I highly recommend his books. The next book is The Pillars of Hercules by Paul Theroux, published in 1995. Paul Theroux is the travel author, and the Pillars of Hercules, he was referring here to Gibraltar, and which is the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. That's why Gibraltar was this very important British colony. I'm not sure if it still is, or if they were turned over to the Spanish, because there's a very narrow entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. And if you can control that, you can control shipping. And of course, that's very important for international shippings to come in and out of that area. And I believe in this book he writes about the Mediterranean Sea, which is very fascinating. You have Southern Europe and North Africa. So 2 very different regions. You have parts of France, which are very, very wealthy. The French Riviera. My great-grandfather wanted to retire after his service in the British military, but he got married, moved to Canada, and had a family, including my grandmother. But, of course, Italy and Greece and part of the Balkan Peninsula, Spain, coast of Spain. But then, of course, North Africa is really been troubled, especially in recent years, very troubled region. Libya, and a lot of refugees traveling across the Mediterranean because of hard times in North Africa, because very tough political problems there and civil war. Egypt, Tunisia, and so forth. So Paul Theroux is a wonderful travel author, does such a good job. It's funny, when I met F. Shonil Jose and mentioned Paul Theroux, and he quoted the guy from Trinidad, that author from Trinidad, who had said that he likes Thoreau but wouldn't want to meet him because he tends to be kind of a critical guy. Very fine author. The next book is Augustus Carp, Esquire, by himself, published in 1924. I finished this on the last day of summer, 2000, which I wrote in my book diary was the best summer of my life. This is when I was going to Roosevelt Park with our son Tim, and we had all these friends there. Billy Kopelman, Daffy Dominguez, and Cholo Dominguez, and Zigco, Ishko, Aaronco, Dexter Togo, Monju Reyes, Alvin Trinidad, Aaron Trinidad, Nico Decini. Anyway, it has nothing to do with this book, but this is more humor, I believe. This is a book from my friend David Solomon. Got it from via Bob Kinsey, and more British humor. The next book is Are You Irish or Normal by Sean O'Grady, 1970, and Now Listen, Mate by John O'Grady, published in 1970. These are 2 Australian humor books in one, sent to me by my friend Dave Biggs in Australia. He kept sending me books, and I read them. This one has a history of Ireland and a commentary on life. O'Grady is very knowledgeable, has good ideas. And so to Dave Biggs, I say, thanks, mate. That's what they say in Australia. They call friends mate. Yeah, so anyway, he kept sending me books that had 2 books in one. Of course, the great books also had that. It tended to do that too. The next book is The Book of Job and The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon, published in 1770. Of course, Job, I believe, is an Old Testament book. And that's one of the most amazing stories of the Bible because, Job was a good man. And then Satan was challenging God. And God was said, oh, this Job's a good fellow. And Satan says, oh, yeah, well, see how good he is if you take everything away from him. So God did. God took everything away. He lost his money. He had been a wealthy man. All his children died. He lost his health. And then he was just a beggar by the side of the road, covered in sores and so forth. And going through real tough times. And people were mocking him like, oh, he continued to pray. Continue to pray. People said, why are you praying? Why do you pray? Look at what God has done to you. You're a good guy and you lost everything. And eventually he had an argument with God. Which argument among friends, you could say. And then eventually God restored everything to him. I guess, he couldn't really restore his children, but he had new children, and he got his money back, and he got his health back. And so it's really, the book of Job is a very interesting story. And then this book on the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, this must be a condensed version, because I have like 12 long volumes of this. This Edward Gibbon did an incredible job, writing, as it says, about the fall of the Roman Empire. And it's there are centuries of story. I think it goes, I can't remember now, but it's an awful lot of good history, And this is really where our Western civilization, or U.S. is Western-based country from Europe, and the Roman Empire really was European history. And so Edward, he really did an amazing job. I have these books here, and definitely something to read. Very worthwhile. He did an enormous amount of work, Edward Gibbon. It's a very famous book. It's a series of volumes, very long. The next book is Only the Ball Was White by Robert Peterson, 1970. This is another book about Negro League baseball in the United States when African Americans couldn't play Major League Baseball. So they had their own leagues, and their fans would go and watch them play. Guys like Rube Foster, Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, played for the Indians, Sam Jethro, Quincy Troop. Really interesting. If you're interested in baseball history, this is important to keep in mind, because these fellows couldn't play Major League Baseball. Their achievements should be recognized. I thought it was wonderful when a number of them were inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame. They never played Major League Baseball, but their achievements were finally recognized, and that was a good thing that the Baseball Hall of Fame did, inducting those fellows. The next book is Three Filipino Women by F. Shonil Jose, published in 1992. Now, the three characters in this novel, one is a politician, another is a prostitute, and the third is a revolutionary. Their names are Narita, Ermi, and Malu. And they're beautiful, talented, and tragic, an apt metaphor for the Philippines. And, he gets into these, nitty-gritty of life, politics, and there's always revolutionaries, people hoping, endeavoring for better government in the Philippines, and part of the whole communist movement. And not only communist movement, but folks who wanted a changing government. The next book is The Master of Go by Yasunari Kawabata, published in 1972. This is a Japanese book, and it's about a story of a long game, and in which the master loses and dies. And this is an interesting topic because, in the Second World War, the Japanese, they had no concept of losing that war. They went into it there, and that's why it was so hard for them. In fact, at the end of the war, they had a slogan, 100 million Japanese. We all died together. They were really willing that was their plan, that if they're going to lose, they're going to die. And when the atomic bombs went off, this kind of shook them up to the extent where they thought, okay, we're gonna lose. They lost. And some people say they weren't good losers, but actually they were. Because once the war ended, it was hard. It's very humiliating. And, they'd suffered a lot. And, of course, they inflicted a lot of suffering as well. But they rebuilt. Of course, Japan has become a very wealthy country. They've had good government, and they haven't been they haven't been a threat to world peace, and they've contributed so much to the world through their products, especially automobiles and other things. The next book is This is Lakeside, 1873 to 1973, Ohio's Chautauqua of the Great Lakes, The Centennial History by James Allen Kessel, published in 1973. Oh, I thought this was wonderful. It's about Lakeside, Ohio, which is a small community on Lake Erie, near Sandusky, Ohio, across from, not far from Kelly's Island. And I was particularly interested in the famous people, especially the 3 American presidents who visited Lakeside. Rutherford B. Hayes, who actually had a home in Fremont, Ohio, not too far away, so it made sense for him to come. And in my first video, we showed the porch of the home where he used to stay. James A. Garfield, who was from Cleveland, I think he stayed at Hotel Lakeside. They can't tell you where he stayed. They lost records of the room. I thought I wanted to go to the room where Garfield had stayed, President Garfield. William McKinley, who was from Canton, Ohio. These fellows all were from not too far away. It made sense for them to come to Lakeside, where our families had reunions. McKinley, of course, played a major role in world history, really, by bringing the U.S. to the Philippines. It was really his decision that the Philippines became an American territory, and the beginning of this wonderful friendship between Filipinos and Americans, in which both are helped. We help each other in different ways, because we both, as different peoples, have different strengths and different weaknesses, so we can help each other. Eleanor Roosevelt came to Lakeside. She was the first lady of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Branch Rickey, who was the guy who signed the first African-American player. What's this? Can't remember his name right now. Jackie Robinson, yeah, for the Brooklyn Dodgers. So anyway, all these interesting people who came to Lakeside, and there were others, including our family, started coming in 1890. One of my great-grandparents, Frank and Lena Zook, started coming. They had 10 children. Now we still go there. The descendants, actually mostly the descendants of 2 of the sisters, my grandmother and her sister, and then one of the brothers. And we keep inviting people. It's a wonderful place if you've never been there. The next book is Antarctica by Kim Stanley Robinson, published in 1988. This is an incredible book. It's about Antarctica, this amazing, really obscure continent on the bottom of the world. He talks about the tyranny of scientists. Fascinating, Actually, all of the there's been a lot of government activity. There's a lot of the people who are down there are funded by the U.S. government and other governments. And the question is, why are they there? What's the point? And supposedly there's a scientific reason. And so these scientists down there, it has to do with and according to this, they're tyrannical. They're like, oh, we're the boss. We're the most important people. I guess they bully people in Antarctica. And then the issue of oil drilling exploration. There could be oil down there because it's so cold. My gosh, they had enough trouble with the Alaska oil. And the eco-terrorists. Oh, these people who, they're trying. They believe in saving the environment, so they sabotage places. To try sabotage industrial things or commercial things, which they believe are going to destroy the environment. Feral, like you think of these feral cats, they're people apparently who are actually becoming indigenous Antarcticans. Just imagine moving to Antarctica and trying to survive down there. Wow, incredible. So I thought this was really something else. Especially these people who are becoming. Just imagine you say, I'm an Antarctican, because there were no people before. There were no ancient peoples in Antarctica. But apparently there are now. They're developing a civilization in Antarctica. Especially guys like Farley Mount who want to get away from it all. And so, an amazing book. I highly recommend it. The next book is Reggie by Reggie Jackson and Mike Lupica, published in 1984. And when I read this book, I thought our son Tim was a young baseball player, and of course he was only 8 years old at the time, but I thought he swung like Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson was a tremendous baseball player in the 1970s, probably the coolest guy. Actually, I really hated him back then because he ended up signing with the New York Yankees and won a couple World Series. Anyway, he played on amazing teams for the Oakland. He won 5 World Series. He had amazing teammates like Raleigh Fingers in Oakland, Joe Rudy, Sal Bando, Gene Tennis, Bill North, Catfish Hunter, and Burkamp and Harris. And with the Yankees, Thurman Munson, Greg Nettles, Mickey Rivers, Willie Randolph, Chris Chambliss, Lou Piniella, and Roy White. So he was a big home run hitter. And they called him the first super duper star on Sports Illustrated. And he was tended to be kind of arrogant and outspoken. And people get mad at him, fight with Billy Martin. And he said, if I could play in New York, they'll have to have name a candy bar after me, like the Baby Ruth candy bar named after Babe Ruth. And actually, they had Reggie bars that they made for a while in New York, Reggie bars. And when people were mad at him, I think because he was feuding with Billy Martin, and then Martin had gotten fired. One day they were throwing Reggie bars on the field. In Cleveland here, we had Pronk bars named after Travis Hafner, kind of a takeoff on those Reggie bars. Tremendous home run hitter. In fact, he hit 3 home runs in a clinching World Series game, I believe in 1977. Just imagine. The next book is Gone Troppo by John O'Grady, 1968, and Gone Gouging by Nino Culata, published in 1975. These are 2 volumes in one, sent to me by my friend in Australia, Dave Biggs, and more Australian humor. The tropical island, there's tropical islands actually in Queensland. Queensland is very an appealing place. It's on the east coast, a little farther north, toward the equator. I guess it's hot year-round there. And he talks about looking for opals in the outback. Opals, I think that would be kind of a precious gem. So the Australians are very good people. They tend to drink too much. There's a lot of drinking down there. But anyway, they're very, very fine people. A nice, good country, Australia. The next book is Twilight of the Idols by Friedrich Nietzsche, 1884, and Heartbreak House by George Bernard Shaw, published in 1919. 2 volumes in one, courtesy of the great books, my friend Dr. Denko. Nietzsche, he was kind of tough. He talked about the Ubermensch, which actually is translated in English as Superman, which we believe actually would be a saint, which is a Superman, a superior human being. And that through yoga meditation, you can't become a Superman. Okay. Of course, you want to be humble about it. I thought Shaw's ideas about World War I were interesting, and about the changes in morality. We have ideas of morality, public morality, and they change over time, and so you really have to question them, because a lot of people go along with whatever the public thinks is moral, and we really shouldn't. We really need to stand up for what we believe is right, regardless of public opinion. The next book is Puppy Love and 13 Short Stories by F. Shonil Jose, published in 1998. Yeah, these are wonderful short stories by my friend Frankie Jose, who is this tremendous Filipino author and very prolific. You can see all these different books that I read by him. He did such a good job. Wonderful man. A very positive influence in the world. So I think very highly of F. Shonil Jose, who is a very good author. Well, we are out of time. As Scarlett O'Hara always said, in Gone with the Wind, tomorrow is another day. And so live long and prosper. May the force be with you. We's going home, to quote Jar Jar Binks, and I'll be back, to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator. So take care. Hope you find a book, and see you next time.